What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Purple and Gold podcast. And today we're going to be going over our first mock draft of the year because draft season is just around the corner. There's just going to be one more game to determine the last two picks, so shouldn't be too much shakeup. But without further ado, let's get straight into this thing. I am so excited that the 2022 draft is finally here. Also, being a Minnesota Vikings fan, no playoffs for us, so our season ended a while ago. But it seems like the first overall pick has shifted from being potentially one of the edge rushers in Hutchinson and Thibodeau to an offensive lineman to protect Trevor Lawrence, and I completely agree with that. I think that makes a ton of sense, but I do not agree with who a lot of people have being mock draft to the Jaguars, which is Evan Neal. Now, Evan Neal is a guy who has tons of size, and that's what you want in an offensive lineman, but I don't think that he is the best offensive tackle prospect in this year's draft. I'm going to go with Ikem Ekwonu from NC State. This guy just plays with violence, and he is very aggressive. Not overly aggressive, but he blocks and he finishes his blocks. I just think he has really clean technique. Ikem Ekwonu, number one overall pick to the Jacksonville Jaguars, make him the franchise left tackle to protect Trevor Lawrence's blind side. Now with the second overall pick, this is a no-brainer. The best edge rusher coming out in this year's class, Aiden Hutchinson, reminds me a lot of a Nick Bosa type of player. I think he's going to be phenomenal. This is a franchise edge rusher. This guy is going to be one of the leaders of the Detroit Lions defense for a long time. Now moving on here to the Houston Texans, and wow, I feel like it's been a long time since they've had a first round pick thanks to Bill O'Brien, who isn't even on the team anymore. But right here, you have the number 3 overall pick. This is a team that needs a lot of help, and what better player than Kyle Hamilton, who many people would argue is the best overall player in this year's draft, and it's really hard to debate against that. I like Kyle Hamilton. He is just a very diverse safety, and he is all over the field. If you've watched any of the Notre Dame games this year, tongue twister. All right, right over here we have the New York Jets, and now a lot of Jets fans I think might say, "Hey, let's go and take Evan Neal right now because we need another tackle on the right side." I just don't know how comfortable I would feel personally having a guy transition to left tackle to right tackle. I just feel like that's a high risk at the number 4 overall pick. So I don't know if I really would want to go with Evan Neal here, which is why I'm going to go with Kayvon Thibodeau. I think he is just a beast. To put it into simple terms, Thibodeau just was very disruptive, one of the best defensive players in the country this year, which is why I think he's going to be a top 5 pick. Him and Hutchinson are just amazing, and the rest of this edge rusher class is amazing. We're going to see a couple more of these guys here in the first round later on. Now over here, the New York Giants. I think this is the pick. Do you go defense here? Very interesting situation here. This is another team that needs offensive line help. I don't think you take an interior guy right now. Very interesting here. I think right here, you're going to take Charles Cross. Now, a lot of you guys might be saying, well, now you're being a little bit like contradictory or contradictive of yourself. I'm going to take Charles Cross here. I know a lot of you guys are going to be saying, well, why would you not give him to the Jets? Because the Jets also need an offensive lineman at right tackle. I feel like the Jets could probably go without it, and I think the Giants probably need the offensive line help a little bit more because if you take a look at the Jets' offensive line, you have Mekhi Becton, who is just very good. I think Connor McGovern is in the middle. You have Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, and then you also have Elijah Vera-Tucker. The right side, I think Morgan Moses, I think that'll be addressed in free agency. I think unlike the Giants, who already have a lot of money invested into Nate Solder, I think they probably won't be willing to spend as much money on the offensive line. And with a top 5 pick and Charles Cross available, which we haven't talked about yet, I think this will be a good pick. I don't know why that took me so long. I think I was just trying to come up with some reasoning. But Charles Cross, I think, is a very solid prospect as well. Again, I do think that he is better than Evan Neal, so that's why I'm giving him to the Giants at number 5. Just a very sturdy, strong leg guy, can really keep his position, and he can move if you need him to. So Charles Cross, I think, is going to be a good pick for the Giants at number 5. Make him another future tackle to protect Daniel Jones for a few more years. Now, here, this is where Evan Neal goes. The Carolina Panthers just need a left tackle. This team fell apart so quickly after a short stint of success at the beginning of the season. But Evan Neal just has huge upside, literally huge upside at 360 pounds. So we'll see what they can do with him. They desperately need offensive line help for whoever is playing quarterback for them next year. Now here, we're going to go with an edge rusher for the New York Giants. They have Azeez Ojulari on one side, who had a pretty productive rookie season. But after that, you don't really have an edge threat. So I'm going to give them David Ojabo from Michigan. This is a guy who comes from a 3-4 system in Michigan, playing at that stand-up edge rusher position. He's going to play a similar role with the Giants, so I'm excited to see what he can do there. Now, this is another team that needs defensive line help pretty badly, and I'm going to keep the Georgia guy in Georgia, send him to Atlanta, Jordan Davis. This guy, I can't wait to see his combine. I mean, whatever his 40 is, I think it's going to be highly impressive for the size that he is. I think they tracked him at 20 miles an hour at one point. But besides all of that, the dude is going to be a run stuffer, and he's probably going to be a 2-down rotational defensive tackle. A guy that big is probably not going to be playing every single down for you. But if you can have a guy up in the middle who can stop the run, make the job easier for guys like Deion Jones at the second level, I think Jordan Davis is going to be a phenomenal defensive tackle in the future years. All right, this is a pretty obvious one right here. We're going to go quarterback, and I think the best quarterback in this year's draft is Matt Corral. Go out and get him. That's going to solve your quarterback issue, hopefully, for the Denver Broncos for the next 4 to 5 years at least. But this team is a quarterback away from greatness, so I think Matt Corral can definitely take them to the promised land. Yeah, that's that. I mean, that's a pretty no-brainer pick. Okay, right here, I think, and I'm going to just ignore the needs most of the time for these teams. Again, we already had the whole offensive tackle talk. I think they're going to go out in free agency and go get one. And I most certainly don't think that they need an interior offensive lineman either, because Vera Tucker is very good, and so is Duvernay Tardif. I mean, when he came over for the Jets, the offensive line was just better as a unit. So, that says all you need to know about that. So I think they're going to go cornerback here, and I think they're going to go with Ahmad Gardner here. Now, I do think he is the number 1 corner prospect in this year's draft. Yes, over Derrick Stingley. Stingley had a very productive first year in college at LSU. It was one of the best defensive back showings ever, really, and a lot of NFL GMs were saying that this guy probably would have been a high first-round pick had he come out of his freshman year into the NFL draft. So that's just high praise right there. The problem with Stingley, though, is that he has played only 9 games, I believe, in the last 2 seasons. So there is a lot of injury concern there, but tons of upside. But Ahmad Gardner, you know that he's going to be on the field for you. You know he's going to be highly productive. He has the length. So I like what we have in Ahmad Gardner in this year's draft. Now, another easy one. This is a team who needs a quarterback. I don't think Taylor Heineke, unfortunately, is the future for that team. I don't see Ryan Fitzpatrick coming back. Kenny Pickett is my number 2 quarterback this year. I think that that's going to be a great fit for Washington if they can get him. Now, just as we were talking about the whole situation with Derrick Stingley, I'm going to take him here. Now, some of you guys may be saying, okay, this is probably a little biased because Vikings fan Derrick Stingley, why not, right? Well, if it was flipped the other way around, I would prefer to have Ahmad Gardner, so no bias here, guys. Just want to make that clear. But, I mean, Derrick Stingley is phenomenal, so is Ahmad Gardner. This cornerback class is definitely good. The defensive side of the ball is highly impressive as a whole this year in this year's draft class. Taking a look at the Cleveland Browns, I think they're going to go edge rusher here. I don't think Jadeveon Clowney is going to come back. So let's get Jermaine Johnson in there. This guy is highly productive. honestly, the person that I would want to compare him to the most is probably Micah Parsons, just the way that they just are constantly running around the field. He's not even a linebacker, he's an edge rusher. He just has the speed, he has the physicality, and it's crazy that I'm comparing him to a linebacker. That just shows how good Micah Parsons is. But I think that Jermaine Johnson brings that same type of motor and energy to the defense. I think he would be a great pick to put alongside Myles Garrett there in Cleveland. Over here, now we have the Baltimore Ravens, and just taking a look at their depth chart as a whole, I mean, this is a pretty talented roster. It's just unfortunate that Lamar couldn't stay healthy this past season. But I'm going to give them a linebacker. Now, yes, you already have Patrick Queen. Give him another person to play along his side on the weak linebacker spot. Or I don't know if they have weak or strong side linebackers in the Ravens defense. But either way, if you draft Devin Lloyd, that's going to be another highly productive linebacker. Right now, the other guy that they have on the field is Josh Bynes, and I'm not really set in stone with that one. But if you have Patrick Queen and Devin Lloyd in the middle, that is going to be a fearsome middle linebacker, or just middle of the field, really, to go up against. I mean, I'm not going to compare it to these guys because they were great when they were together, but CJ Mosley and Ray Lewis, I mean, hey, maybe we'll have something here. You know what I mean? That's the last time that the Ravens were in the Super Bowl. So, two solid linebackers in the middle, I think, would be highly beneficial for this Ravens defense. Now, right here, there's going to be a little stretch where the Eagles have a ton of picks. Eagles had a very successful season, considering that this was supposed to be a rebuild year. But, I mean, they made the playoffs. They had a winning record. Just a dub year, really, for the Eagles in general. Now you have 3 first-round picks in the middle of the round. This is great for the Eagles. They have a future set up in front of them. I'm going to give them Kenyon Green from Texas A&M. I think he has a great film right now. He's really good at, pulling on his blocks and getting to the second level. Just a really physical guard, and that's exactly what you want. I like Kenyon Green. And then over here, we're going to go with who I think is the number 3 corner in this year's draft, and that's going to be Roger McCreery out of Auburn. He had a lot of pass deflections at his time in Auburn, just has sticky coverage, and I think he has really good technique. He's not overly aggressive, but knows how to play the ball extremely well. I like Roger McCreery a lot. Now going on to the LA Chargers. This is an interesting one. Now, I do think that they do need a little bit of offensive line help, but I don't think we're going to do that yet. I think we're going to give them Devontae Wyatt out of Georgia because this run defense was atrocious last year, to be frank about it. And I think if you can get a guy in the middle who can help stuff the run and make it easier for the guys on the second level, I think that's going to be very beneficial. I think part of the struggles is that this team was 4-3 before Brandon Staley came in, and they just went to a completely different scheme. So I think guys are still trying to get adjusted to their roles and responsibilities. But I think if you can get a guy like Devontae Wyatt in here, I think that's going to help him out tremendously. Now, for any of you guys who have questions about Devontae Wyatt and say maybe, oh, he was only good because he had Jordan Davis, but I said, well, actually, a majority of Devontae Wyatt's best plays came when Jordan Davis was not on the field. So I think this guy is going to be highly productive, just like Jordan Davis. 2 of the best interior defensive linemen are coming from Georgia this year, which explains a lot why they had the best defense in college football. So, all right, over here, I think that the New Orleans Saints are going to stick with Jameis Winston for another year. I don't see why you wouldn't unless you're really concerned about his injury, but that's not really me. Right here, we're going to go with Jameson Williams. Now, I know some people are concerned because he does have that ACL injury that he just recently suffered in the national championship game, but when this guy's on the field, I mean, he's just extremely talented. He has the speed, he has the route running, he has the hands. Jameson Williams was probably one of the best wide receivers, if not the best wide receiver in college football this year. So, just, I don't know how you can pass up on this guy regardless of his injury. I think he's going to come back and be fine. So, all right, taking a look at the Eagles again. I think they also need a linebacker. It's hard to name who their linebackers are, and even if you can, they're not very good. I know Alex Singleton probably had a half-decent year, but it's not ideal for a linebacker. So we're going to give him the Kobe Dean out of Georgia. This guy is another highly productive linebacker here. I think him and Devin Lloyd are going to be really good, and they're going to be flying around the field for whatever team it is that they're playing for. Um, but I like the 3 picks that we got there for the Eagles. I think there's a lot to be excited about. And here, for the other Pennsylvania team, I'm going to give the Pittsburgh Steelers Malik Willis. There already is rumors going around that this is the guy that they like. So if that is the case, this is a match right here in Malik Willis, the next quarterback to replace Ben Roethlisberger. Here, the Patriots, I think that they need cornerback help, and there is still talent on the board. I'm going to give them Andrew Booth out of Clemson. I think this guy, he's willing to go up and make tackles. He's very physical. He's a big corner. I don't know. I really like Andrew Booth, and he's at Clemson, so the guy was talented from a while ago. But I think that they need help. Jalen Mills is just, I don't know, that's not a guy that you really want out there as your number 2 corner. So I think you pair him up alongside J.C. Jackson, who's going to take care of the number 1 wide receiver of the team that you're facing. I think this is going to be a great pick right here to complement that defense. Here for the Las Vegas Raiders, I think this is another team that needs cornerback help. Casey Hayward had a pretty productive year this year. I know Trayvon Mullen was on IR, and then you also have Nate Hobbs, who was pretty promising. Brandon Facyson I don't think he's good. So I think we're going to go out here and get ourselves another corner in Trent McDuffie. This guy also knows how to play the ball extremely well, and you'd hope so for a first-round corner, but, there have been first-round corners in the past who haven't been very good at that. But I think Trent McDuffie has a lot of upside, and, guys like Marcus Peters is another corner that came from Washington, so that these guys are brought up. And look, Kyler Gordon is another prospect here from Washington, so they know what they're doing with their defensive backs in Washington, so I'd have faith with that. Now over here, we have the Arizona Cardinals, and this is probably one of the most disappointing teams this season, considering how they started and how they just fell apart. I do not believe in Cliff Kingsbury. I think he is the biggest issue currently with the Cardinals. But setting all of that aside, we're just here to draft a player. I'm going to give them an interior defensive lineman. I'm not really a Corey Peters fan, and I don't know if anyone really is, but I think DeMarvin Leal is really good from Texas A&M. I think this is a very versatile guy. You can put him on the outside, you can put him on the inside. He's standing at about 290 pounds right now, which isn't ideal for an interior defensive lineman. But if you want to move him around, you can definitely do that. He's definitely going to create a lot of pressure for the defense there in Arizona. Now, this is another team that needs defensive line help, and I'm going to give it to them. Travon Walker out of Georgia for the Dallas Cowboys. Opposite end of DeMarcus Lawrence is Randy Gregory, and Gregory is not bad, but if you can get a guy who's a little bit more productive, create more pressure for that already insane defense for the Dallas Cowboys, which on paper doesn't look that great, but I guess you put them together with Dan Quinn's defense and they're phenomenal. Get a guy like Travon Walker who, you put him at the edge and he's just going to beat you with his speed and just with his hand technique. And then you put him to the inside and he can bull rush the crap out of interior defensive linemen. This guy, another reason why the Georgia defense was so good this year. I think he's going to be great in the NFL. And it just comes to show how great this edge rusher class is as a whole. You're getting a really talented and valued pick here at 24. For the Buffalo Bills, now this is another team that is just stacked and they are talented across the board. It was hard to find a person that I would want to give them, I guess. But I'm going to give them Trevor Penning out of Northern Iowa. Spencer Brown is your other right tackle. And according to PFF, he had 1 sack given up this year, but he had 8 penalties. And I'm assuming that a lot of those were holding penalties. So, holding is almost just as bad as a sack. You just don't lose it down. But I think help out that offensive lineup a little bit because considering how little bit of problems there are with the roster, it was just hard to find something that you would want to improve on with the players that are currently on the board. So I think Trevor Penning, probably a project player coming out of a Division II school, but I think we have something there for the Buffalo Bills to work with. Now here, this is another team where I was like, okay, the players that are on the board don't really match up with what is needed, so let's just go with the best player available here. And I'm going to give the Tennessee Titans Traylon Burks. Now, why does Traylon Burks fit with the Titans? I think this is a guy that they're going to like if they watch him on film, because you look at the receivers that they have on the team. The two best receivers is A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. These are big, physical wide receivers, and that's exactly what Traylon Burks is. I think that he's probably the closest comparison to a guy like A.J. Brown. So I think this is a guy that they're going to like. I think George Karlaftis is definitely another pick that they could consider at this point. But I think Harold Landry and Bud Dupree, I think they're a very good combination to have there. But either way, I think either one of those players can be very good for the Tennessee Titans. And if you give uh, Tannehill a third receiver and a guy who can potentially help out when A.J. Brown and Julio Jones gets hurt next season. I'm not wishing that upon them, but, trends in previous seasons have shown that those guys cannot stay healthy for very long. Um, I think Traylon Burks would be a good fit there for the Tennessee Titans. And this is where we're going to see a run on wide receivers for a little bit. So my second wide receiver in this year's draft is going to be Jahan Dodson. I think this makes a ton of sense. Now, some of you guys may be saying, wait. Tom Brady just retired. Boys, it's Kyle Trask season. He's going to be the quarterback, if not him. Former first-round pick Blaine Gabbert, right? So I think they're going to work with one of those guys over there. I mean, you spent a second-round pick on Kyle Trask, so I wouldn't be surprised if they put him in and start if he's ready. But yeah, I think Jahan Dotson adds a different element to the Buccaneers wide receiver game that they didn't have before. I mean, Mike Evans is your 50-50 guy. And then Chris Godwin, I mean, he's pretty good at his route running and gaining separation. But Jahan Dotson is going to add that over-the-top speed. And he's not just a deep ball type of guy, but he knows how to get open at every single level of the field. And that's what I like the most about Jahan Dotson. He makes plays, whichever way you need it to be, whether it's run after the catch or through the deep ball. The guy can do it all. So I like Jahan Dotson, one of the most exciting wide receivers to watch in college football. Now here, typically the Green Bay Packers are going to go on defense, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do again, but I couldn't find a defensive player that I think they would probably want. Now, yes, Karlaftis is still on the board, but Rashawn Gary has broken out to be a very good edge rusher in this league, and I think Preston Williams will probably go, but I think Zadarius Smith will be the guy that they keep opposite of Gary. So I'm going to give them a wide receiver, and people have been mocking wide receivers to the Green Bay Packers year after year since I've been following, and it never happens. But I'm going to do it anyway because I think it's right. I don't think I think Lazard, I think, is kind of trending upwards, but Valdez-Scantling, I mean, he still has the same issues. So I don't think he's getting any better than what he already is. So right here, I'm going to give them the next best receiver. And yes, he's ranked number 60. I don't care. This is not my big board. I like John Mechie. I think he has that same speed that Marquez Valdez-Scantling has that they want in their second wide receiver. But he's so much better. So it just makes sense to replace a guy that you already have on your team with someone who can hold the same responsibilities and do it at a much higher level. I like John Mechie there for the Green Bay Packers. Here, we're going to go with another wide receiver. And I'm going to go with my number 4 guy, which is Chris Olave out of Ohio State. Obviously, a lot of these guys got outshined by Jackson Smith and Jigba, who will probably come out into the NFL draft 2 to 3 years from now. But Chris Olave is another highly productive Ohio State receiver, along with Njigba and also Wilson. So I like what they have there for Tua Tagovailoa and that Dolphins offense. Now, I think we very easily could have gone with an offensive lineman here, but Robert Hunt, I believe, only gave up 2 sacks this year. And, some people could say maybe a tackle, but you also have Liam Eichenberg, who you drafted last year. So, I don't know. I think maybe we can attack the offensive line in the second round for the Dolphins. And they desperately need a wide receiver. I mean, Jalen Waddle is great. Devontae Parker is just a very mid wide receiver at this point. I don't think Will Fuller is coming back because of his injury history. I don't think they want to deal with that anymore. So just get a solid second option for Tua and Chris Olave, and I think we can see that offense blossom a little more. We're going to go with another wide receiver here, and we're going to get Drake London for the Kansas City Chiefs. This is my number 5 wide receiver in this year's draft. This guy has some elevation to his game. I mean, I think the way that he can go up for the ball is very similar to an Allen Robinson type player. Obviously, Allen Robinson wasn't that productive this year, but just from a skill set a skill set standpoint, he can go up and get the ball. He has a very great vertical, and he's going to go up and get that 50-50 ball. But throwing a 50-50 ball to him is more like 75-25. So I like what they have there on Drake London at USC. And you look at the guys that they've brought out recently. I mean, Juju Smith-Schuster, you have Michael Pittman. Those are just some of the USC wide receivers. Amon-Ra St. Brown that have come out of USC recently. So they know what they're doing with their wide receivers down there in Southern California. So I like what they have in Drake London there. Pair him up with Tyreek Hill, Mecole Hardman, Travis Kelce. That's going to be a dangerous corpse for Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid to work with. Now here, again, this is not my decision. They think that the Bengals are going to lose the Super Bowl, so that's just what we're going to have to rock with. For anyone who wanted them to draft an offensive lineman last year, you're going to get your wish, and I'm going to take Jahan Dodson out of Boston College. This guy is just extremely talented, and he's a big guy. Now, I know it's like, okay, no duh. The offensive lineman has to be big. Well, for someone who watches Minnesota Vikings football, for some reason, Rick Spielman didn't like to draft big offensive linemen. So we're stuck with, guys who are a little smaller like Garrett Bradbury, and that's why he just gets pushed back. But anyway, side rant aside, the Bengals, they desperately still need offensive line help, even after addressing that with Jackson Carman last year in the second round. But Zion Johnson is going to be just a unit. I mean, he's going to be a guy that's hard to move. And you see him making blocks down the field as well. So I think he's very good at that. But he just has a very sturdy build to him. Like I said, it's hard to move Zion Johnson. He was very good at Boston College. And finally, the last pick of the first round of the 2022 NFL Draft, mock draft number 1. I'm going to give them a quarterback, and I'm going to give them Carson Strong. I think Carson Strong is a first-round talent quarterback this year, and I was thinking, well, you could probably get Carson Strong in the second round, get another guy here in the first round, but it just makes sense to get a quarterback and have that ability to exercise a fifth-year option if necessary in the future. So I think that's why it makes sense for the Lions to take him with the last pick in the first round. Jared Goff is definitely not the future, and they definitely could have gone with the quarterback at the number 2 pick, but we'll see. I mean, I think Carson Strong could be a project player, sit under Jared Goff for a year, and then see what Strong can do after that. The guy just has a strong arm talent. You see what I did there. But I like what we have in this year's draft class. I think this is a very talented one. And some people may not agree with me, but I think when we look a few years down the road from here, I think we're going to see a lot of guys from this draft class and say, wow, this class was pretty damn good. But we're going to go over a recap right here. The top 5 picks: Ikem Ekwonu, Aiden Hutchinson, Kyle Hamilton, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Charles Cross. I think the biggest shocker there would probably be the first or the last offensive tackle there. I know many people may not agree with me with Charles Cross, but that's just how I see it, I guess. Over here, so taking a look here, we have Evan Neal, David Ojabo, Jordan Davis, Matt Corral, and Ahmad Gardner. Evan Neal, I think, would be a great pick for the Carolina Panthers at number 6. I wouldn't be shocked if he goes higher, though, potentially at number 1. But again, I just followed, what I believe, and I think he's the 3rd best tackle in this draft class, so I put him there at number 6 to the Carolina Panthers, who desperately need offensive line help. And then over here we have Kenny Pickett, Derrick Stingley, Jermaine Johnson, Devin Lloyd, and Kenyon Green. If Derrick Stingley goes higher than this in the draft, I wouldn't be surprised. But if he falls into the laps of the Minnesota Vikings, I mean, this is definitely a guy that I think you can work with. And if he can stay healthy, might be one of the most productive cornerbacks in the league. I mean, if he can replicate anything that he did in his freshman year, the upside is just through the roof. My goodness. Here we're in the middle of the round. We have Roger McCreery, Devontae Wyatt, Jameson Williams, Nakobe Dean, and Malik Willis. Now, I don't know if Jameson Williams will still be a first-round pick when we, go further into the draft process a few months from now. But I think a lot of teams like Jameson Williams, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's a first-rounder. If the Saints can get him, he's going to bring another element to the team, which they don't have, which is literally a wide receiver. I don't know what's going on with Michael Thomas, but if you can pair him up with Michael Thomas, I think Jameis Winston's going to have a lot of fun. And then Malik Willis, potentially the new franchise quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's just going to be a huge change from what they had in Ben Roethlisberger. Here, Andrew Booth Jr., Trent McDuffie, DeMarvin Leal, Trevon Walker, and Trevor Penning. I think here the cornerbacks, I think, are going to have an immediate starting role on their teams. So I think those two guys plug in and play for the Patriots and the Raiders. And the Raiders actually took some staff from the Patriots. So we might see a little bit of a similar trend there on how the teams are built. And then actually here, we'll just go with the last few picks over here. Traylon Burks, Jahan Dodson, John Mechie, Chris Olave, Drake London, Zion Johnson, and Carson Strong. I think this is where we're going to see the run on wide receivers go here in the late first round. I mean, right here we have 5 going consecutively, and then the Bengals finally get the offensive line help that they need. And it's crazy to think that they're already in the Super Bowl without it. And then the Lions potentially get their franchise quarterback in Carson Strong from Nevada. But let me know what you guys think about this mock draft in the comment section below. There's going to be definitely more to come in the future here on this channel, and we're going to have individual team mock drafts later on as well. So if you guys like what you see, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and I guess I'll see you guys in a future mock draft video.